Hi everyone, Erik Roth here, shamanic alchemical astrologer, here to bring you another video in the series of signs, planets, and stellar rhythms. We're getting close to the end of the month of February 2026, and March is right around the corner, due in large part to a shorter month of that is always a part of February's um, calendar month here. Um, yeah, we're just coming off of a solar eclipse, the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in February. And as of this recording, this is the first day that Mercury stations retrograde in Pisces. So for those that have a lot of Pisces energy in their chart or anything around Sagittarius, Virgo, or Gemini, you're definitely going to be at the effects of this Mercury retrograde, especially between the degrees of 22 and I believe it goes all the way back to 8 degrees of Pisces. So without further ado, we're going to talk about the month of March 2026, continuing with the eclipse season and much, much more. All right, here we go. All right, March 2026. This is episode 80 of Science, Planets, and Stellar Rhythms. Really happy to talk about this upcoming month of March. There's plenty to discuss for the month. And so, there's some definitely the chart at the end that kind of gives you a breakdown of all the things that are happening for the month of March. And as I always do, I hit the major highlights. So this isn't everything that takes place in the month of March. Not an exhaustive view in this, but just the major important things that are going to occur in the month of March. All right, so here's just a summary, a basic list of the highlights. We got a full moon eclipse in Virgo. We have Jupiter stationing direct this month. Of course, we've got the equinox when the sun moves into Aries. We have a lot of Aries energy in the month of March. So just something we're going to talk about a lot of in this video. Mars will move into Pisces and also rise in the morning sky. So that's a big event. And then also keep in mind we've got the Chiron, the third in a series of three conjunctions with Chiron and Eris, and Venus will also be conjuncting them at the towards the end of the month as well, not long after Chiron and Eris do conjunct. So they definitely play a significant role into the experience of the month of March. Oh, and Mercury, of course, stations direct this month. Can't forget that. There's a lot of activities happening in March. Okay, so the outer planets, there's only one that shifts direction this month, and that is Jupiter, stationing direct on March 10th. So it stays at the 15-degree range of Cancer throughout the month of March. Pluto and Eris in 24 to 25 degrees. Not sorry, Pluto and Aries. Chiron and Eris, 24 to 25 degrees of Aries. Pluto moves all the way to 513 Aquarius, so it's really getting deeper and deeper into the Aquarius archetype. Uranus moves but basically a full degree this month from 2744 to 2846. Taurus and then Saturn and Neptune are really close together in the beginning of the month, and then they really start to separate. They'll be about 3 degrees apart by the end of March. Okay. Want to talk a little bit about Pisces and Aries and something that happened also in 2025. There was a large cluster, a stellium in Pisces and in Aries. And that was also a transitionary period for Neptune and then later for Saturn in um, the February, March, and April period of 2025. This year feels like the stellium is a bit more significant because now that Saturn and Neptune are more fully into Aries, that particularly the Aries stellium is going to be really special, I feel, in combination. We've got Saturn and Neptune at the beginning of the sign, and then Chiron and Eris towards the end of the sign. And then Venus joins them later in the month of March. And then also the sun, when it moves into the equinox, it also joins Saturn and Neptune as well. So March and April, really, really powerful months for this Pisces Aries alchemy. Mercury's going to spend a lot of time in Pisces. In fact, the whole month it spends in the sign of Pisces. It won't move out of there until the middle of April 2026. So we have a combination of Pisces, which is a passive sign. It's all about the heart and empathy and spiritual communion and connection. It's dreams and sort of outside of reality and service to spirit and to others. Aries, on the other hand, is a powerful initiator for the world, assertively driving headlong into purpose and mission. And Aries is a highly reactive, fiery, strong-willed, and competitive. So together, this can alchemize into more of an heart-centered force of nature, overcoming obstacles, but with also a sense of compassion, empathy, and maybe even creating safe space. But at the core, it's like believing in a much higher purpose. So together, like if we were to kind of boil it down to its core of the Aries Pisces alchemy, it's believing in a higher purpose. And for those that have a strong mix of these two archetypes, this is something that can take a long while to understand within the self. Like it could take a while to alchemize all that in there. So, but that's sort of the environment that we are in right now as humanity. What does that look like? How are we going to do both and come into a space where we believe in a higher purpose, believe in a higher path, and at the same time being able to utilize our skill set, our gifts to overcome obstacles, to keep our eye on the prize as far as like our to better humanity, to better ourselves, and connection with our community around us. At the same time, to be of service too. So that's what this alchemy of Pisces and Aries is about. Then on the second, so we got on the first. There really isn't anything major astrological thing that's taking place, but on the second and the morning, I think it's the morning of the second of March 2nd, 2026, Mars will ingress into the sign of Pisces, adding to this Pisces element. And in fact, I think Mars has a good symbolic energy that represents Aries just by itself because it has a strong resonance with that sign and it's rules that sign in traditional astrology. Well, Mars moving into Pisces kind of helps bring in as the opportunity for that alchemy to take place more strongly. So Venus is already in Pisces, but it at the time that Mars enters it, as you can see here, but Mars will be in the sign of Pisces until April 9th. So it'll go from March 2nd to April 9th, really bringing giving uh, uh, sort of a voice to a more assertive version of Pisces, but also not leaving behind the heart. And what's interesting about this period is that Mars will conjunct Mercury for the second time this year. There's a whole series of Mars Mercury conjunctions. There was a couple in 2025, and here we have a second one in 2026, and there'll be a third, I believe it's in April, the following month. So a three in a 4 month period, which is so there's a really strong Mercury Mars connection for the first third of this year. So yeah, these two planets meet again. It says here, I've got, yeah, April 20th, 2026. So it's not too long from now. Okay. With that, we have a full moon coming up in the sign of Virgo, and this happens to be a full moon eclipse. So you can see the moon kind of operating almost on its own. It's with its south node, the lunar south node. So it's a south node eclipse. But you can see the entire cluster of Piscean energy on March 3rd here, with a little bit into Aries in the early degrees, and then some significant ones in the late degrees, including Ceres. So that's the energy of this eclipse. And I'm going to talk about what some of this means. But there's a whole video that Kaylin Castell and I do about this full moon eclipse and the energies behind it. Definitely take a look at that. It's you can find out my YouTube channel and Kayla Costell's YouTube channel as well as a collaboration. Um, but this eclipse really brings in a much greater awareness of our service to the world and creating sacred space in our life. It highlights the energy of that we're here in part to be stewards of the earth, to be caretakers. And of course, in a lot of ways, we're not doing a very good job of that. But there are, of course, are people with each passing year more and more aware of the importance of Earth, not just as a resource, but also as something to protect and to connect with and to grow with and evolve and have a deeper heartfelt energy with Mother Gaia itself. And so I do feel like this Virgo full moon eclipse is reminding us of that. Now it's a total lunar eclipse, and so the reddish shadow will be on the moon, and some people call it a blood moon because it has sort of that darkish appearance with it, with the dark red. But really, it's what's really being projected upon there is all the sunsets and sunrises on the planet. And it's fascinating because it's showing the beginnings and the endings all at once. So it's kind of a liminal space. It's a space between worlds, a twilight space that we can all connect with, and that anything is possible. So I don't recommend necessarily making any major commitments during this time of the full moon eclipse or on the day of the eclipse, but it is a day that we can meditate on, reflect on, and integrate in how what is our relationship with Earth and our sacred work in the world and creating sacred space. It happens in the middle of the night on the Pacific coast of North America at 3:37 a.m. is the center of the eclipse, so 6:30 a.m. in Eastern time. Um, and so the Americas are going to be sort of in the center of the target zone of this, with the Pacific Ocean really strongly involved, and Hawaii will be able to see the whole thing in its from beginning to end, and from the late evening into the very wee hours of the morning, including Alaska and so forth. So if you get a chance to say this eclipse in a, having to wake up maybe or stay up late at night and then take a second dose of sleep, it's definitely worth tuning into, especially if it's not cloudy outside. All right. So the Sabian symbol, this is a really interesting symbol of the eclipse. It's a symbol that I am not that familiar with as far as when I've looked up symbols and connected with them. But this is a symbol of the powerful statesman overcomes a state of political hysteria. So this has a lot to do with, particularly in the U.S. and some other parts of the world, of the political climate. A person like a president swaying the mob, having the charisma and talent to turn situations around, elements of personality that get out of control and then take over, mind control, being motivated, issues of success, but also rhetoric and knowing what to say and when to say it. But this also has like the area of Virgo where it's like really the thought part of it and knowing what to say and not sort of so much of the chaos of this. However, it's also kind of a response to the Sabian symbol. So it looks to be, of course, strongly related to this political climate, but also on a personal level, this can be interpreted as being able to navigate the chaos with wit and savvy, saying the right things at the right time, but also knowing that we have an awareness of the forces around us that are manipulating and pushing us through various resources, like in social media and mainstream media and or what is known called legacy media and political waves and other things, corporate propaganda and all kinds of things can really show up in this. So it's giving us a chance to kind of have a deeper awareness of that and to learn how to work with that and navigate that to our advantage, but also maybe even thinking of ways to sort of adding our voice and sacred work in the world to change the way the path is going for humanity. for communities, for others out there in the world. Okay, so here's where the eclipse will be, and you can see the Lion constellation is right here. Now I don't know why the crab is right there. That's not the place for it. Let me just delete that because that's the crab is before the actual lion. So let's bring that back up. All right. So here's the Lion constellation. It's something that I talk about with Kaylin, and she talks about it as well. And here we have the eclipse between the star of Regulus and Denebula. Denebula representing the tail of the lion, and Regulus the heart. And in between is sort of the belly and the sort of the hindquarters of the lion. These are the stars Zosma and Chirton that are closest to the ecliptic. I'm sorry, not the ecliptic, but the lunar eclipse itself. So there's something that we are trying to integrate, trying to digest in ourselves, trying to work with as it becomes part of us. And it's an opportunity to kind of reflect on that and do some more internal stuff. That's what I feel a lot about this particular eclipse. And so if you get a chance to see it out there in the sky, this is what it will sort of resemble here. And I've also marked the September equinox point. So the eclipse is not far from the equinox in September, and as we will only be less than 3 weeks away from the actual spring equinox or March equinox point. All right, so Venus moves into Aries on March 6th. So 4 days after it entered Pisces, after Mars entered Pisces, Venus enters Aries, bringing more fiery energy to humanity. Venus in Aries taps into the archetype of the warrior spirit, the defender of the cosmic order, and the individualist, standing up for those that don't have a voice. Venus's entry into Aries comes soon after the Neptune-Saturn ingress into Aries and their conjunction. Venus adds an element of the rise of the goddess in her willful desires and gifts to overcome the odds to accomplish anything. And right after this, Venus has conjunctions with Neptune and Saturn, with Neptune at 116 Aries and Saturn at 238 Aries, respectfully. And then later at the end of the month, on March 26th, Venus conjuncts Eris, both Eris and Chiron, at the 2503 and 2524 degree of Aries, respectively. And so Venus is contributing a lot, and I do feel like it will be a big activator for Saturn and Neptune as it moves into that space. So here's a slide for March 7th and 8th. And these are definitely days to pay attention to as Mars moves into Pisces on the 2nd. Venus moves into Aries on the 6th. We have an eclipse on the 3rd. And then Venus is conjunct Saturn and Neptune on the 7th and 8th. I'm sorry, Neptune and Saturn on the 7th and 8th, respectively. So Venus brings more of the sort of energy of the feminine to our lives, helps us receive and value ourselves in body and spirit. This is a softer energy than both Mercury and Mars, and it may help the recent release of the Saturn-Neptune conjunction that took place to integrate more effectively through humanity. So this could be a way where there could be some energies and things stirred up, but there could also be some people that resist that and try to react in a way because it is Aries and it is a pretty strongly willed archetype that is taking place in Aries. And then just to comment on Saturn and Neptune, what they're representing is the spirit into matter. So in past conjunctions, we've uncovered the unseen secrets of DNA, early development of photography and film, spiritual structures, ideas and visions manifesting before our senses. And it can also lead to opportunities to see the idealisms and ideologies that shake the foundations of humanity, and especially ones that have, some kind of element of reality to them, and not something that is just fiction or based on lies or based on illusion, but something where there may be a way for it to kind of take hold into, onto the physical realm, into form. So something to look forward, something to look to, maybe not necessarily forward to, and maybe in some ways to look forward to, but something to really connect with because after the sun moves into Aries towards the end of March, the equinox, it will also conjunct Neptune and Saturn as well. So we're going to get quite a lot of planets coming in and conjuncting, um, including the sun, conjuncting Saturn and Neptune. And in April, I think it's in April, yes, Mars will also conjunct Neptune and Saturn as well. And then later, Mercury will also do the same. So we've got a lot of planets kind of parading through, connecting with Saturn and Neptune during this time of March and in April. And then soon after that, on March 10th, Jupiter stations direct at 1505 Cancer. So, let's see. This would be in the sign of Cancer. So after that, I've got some old language in there. I'm going to skip over that, but I just wanted to mention I've got some information about Uranus there. Interesting. So, I've got to make a correction to that, but the eclipse after Jupiter stations direct, whenever Jupiter stations direct, or any planet stations direct or retrograde, it's a still point of that planet. And for Jupiter in Cancer, it's opening up and moving toward sort of an accelerated pathway. And in the sign of Cancer, this will end up being more about how we care for others, expanding our ideas of what family and community are. And it's not about regressing into more of a bloodline family, family first, and only family, and eschewing other people from other nationalities or other cultures, but actually connecting in, expanding the definition of what family is. But then 5 days later, we have eclipse season that ends. So it began all the way on February 11th, 2026, and will go until March 15th. But the center of that was February 27th, just 2 days from this recording on February 25th. So the center of it is always when the sun is conjunct one of the two nodes. In this case, it's conjuncting the north node, while the March eclipse, the March 3rd eclipse, was the south node eclipse. So that conjuncted the south node, the moon in the south node. And so usually eclipse seasons are a little over a month long, and they start and end when the sun is about roughly 16 degrees from one of the nodes. Some measure it up to even 18 degrees, although it'd be hard to get any kind of like I say, a lunar eclipse at that distant, because you can get this thing called a penumbral eclipse, lunar eclipse, but it's very, very faint. And at 18 degrees, I would be hard pressed to do it. But it was something that I was looking up and studied it, and I didn't really find any eclipses that took place past 16 degrees or around the 16 and a half degree mark. So maybe I didn't look at all the eclipses, but that's what I've got for you here on that. But then the very next day, um, actually, do I have this? I'm looking to see. No, I don't. Okay. So this slide is a stand-in for both the Mercury Mars conjunction and Mars rising. So on March 16th, Mars will get to the 15-degree mark from the sun. And when it does that, it means that there is a much greater chance of being able to see Mars. You can't really see it when it's within about under 15 degrees and especially under 10 degrees. But at 15 degrees, it definitely makes a difference. So Mars is meaning it's in the underworld phase of its journey, the synodic journey, rising up into phase 4, which is the morning star phase of Mars. So the rebirth of Mars will start very slowly, like a hibernating bear waking up from a long winter. It's vulnerable, groggy, and hungry for energy. But in the sign of Pisces, it can feel a whole lot more and is sensitive to the needs of others as well. So this rise happens a day before Mars conjuncts Mercury at 10:02 Pisces on March 15th. Mercury can become quite a guide for Mars leaving the underworld. So it's almost as if the messenger god is coming in and helping the masculine wake up into its new journey that it's taking in the morning sky, and helping it emerge with a more heartfelt expression and in for the masculine and humanity. So the masculine within us all and humanity in general there too. Okay, then we move into the Pisces new moon, and it's we've got this is a heart spirit sensitivity new moon, and you can see here circled in red how close it is within about 5 degrees of Saturn and only 3 degrees from Neptune. So it's conjunct Saturn Neptune, but also sextile Hygeia as well. So Hygeia bringing in energy around self-care and health, um, wellness. So this also plays a role in this energy that's sort of being bottled up right in here in the Pisces Aries track here. This new moon takes place at 6:23 p.m. Pacific time. It's actually going to be Pacific Daylight Time by then. Um, and it will be again on the 18th of March. Um, so by its conjunction with Saturn and Neptune, it also is an activator for Saturn and Neptune, meaning that because it's an eclipse and the moon the following day will conjunct Neptune and Saturn. And so you're going to be really getting a lot of Saturn Neptune energy, even though they were conjunct on February 20th. The energy of March is still strongly expressive of Saturn and Neptune archetypal energy. So here's the Sabian symbol, and I love this one because it really points to like a way for like sort of that especially in Pisces, that at one ment with everything. Interpretation of this is, of the prism, which is basically the symbol. It's the light breaking into many colors as it passes through a prism. So this is really focused upon how many parts that we are all part of the great one, of the at one ment. We are made of all the infinite shades, colors, types, cultures, genders, and more. And it is all stronger together, and with one light and one cosmos. So all the different parts are all part of the same fabric of not just the third dimensional reality, but all the dimensions. And we could think of this as just one sliver of the potential here and what a prism represents in this way. So I love this because it some of the key words here, spectrum analysis, crystal healing, color and crystal healing, rainbows, side effects of light passing through, disseminating information, kind of checking things out, looking at it more carefully, auras, light, reflection, laboratory, even a diffracted personality, like maybe sometimes the shadow that could be like where it gets separated and you're not putting all the pieces together. But I think it's sort of the reverse in the way that shows it's a reflection that well, this one light contains all, and that what we're seeing has all the different parts to it, if you will, all the different bandwidths, at least in our capability from physical sight. But then when we think of it from a deeper level in the dream realm and other dimensions, the ethereal realm, we can encompass so much more in that way. So I love that this is a part of the new moon symbol here, and I think it's going to be a new moon that we all want to connect into and show ourselves that we're all part of each other's lives, part of the earth, part of part of all people and all nations. And then the following day, we get this Chiron Eris conjunction. Now, the new moon, which is right here, Chiron and Eris are only a minute apart at the time of the new moon. So they're really, really close. So this is really interesting. We have two pairs of conjunctions happening at once. And even the south node and Mercury, oh, sorry, the north node and Mercury are less than half a degree apart in at the eighth degree of Pisces. So there's actually 3 points where we're getting some really powerful messages through the cosmos here between Pisces and Aries. So like that again, more of that Pisces Aries alchemy taking place in all of this. So in the Chiron Eris part of this, this can bring in, we had two of them back in May and October of 2025, and then now March 19th at 24:59 Aries. So this has a sort of an opportunity for more volatility to occur. But the intent of it is to bring attention to issues surrounding war, activism, speaking from instinct, equal rights, healing from injustice, and real world truth. Um, basically saying, we've got, let's talk about it. Let's have our voices heard. Let's speak the truth and not use obscuration, or deflection or projection. Let's look at this from a deeper level and a healing level, and how can we come together without just simply pointing fingers and uh, you know having war beget war or violence beget violence, but something that brings in greater collective collaboration and peace. Okay, so then we get to the equinox, March 20th, 2026 at 7:45 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. The sun moves into a new sign every month, and March always brings in the sign of Aries. This is the alpha point of the zodiac and the vernal equinox. And so at that point in the southern hemisphere, though, it's autumn. So they're moving into where the sun is less um, visible, meaning there's not as many hours of daylight in the southern hemisphere. So Sun joins Neptune, Saturn, Venus, Eris, and Chiron, adding to the developing stellium in Pisces this month. Now it's Aries. So it's Pisces moving into Aries and vice versa. So we've got particularly Mars and Mercury and the North Node all still in Pisces. And now we're moving more of this energy into Aries. So this is where Aries starts to really take hold more strongly with the sun moving in there. And so the sun adds fuel to the fires of justice, defense of the vulnerable, overcoming obstacles, and a strong, fiery spirit. And we can work with the sun in Aries by working with our instincts and intuition and not be in our head as much. It's about connecting our own inner warrior spirit upon our life mission and really stepping into the fold of who we are. And so, especially because all these other planets are in Aries, it's really activating that more strongly. And then on the 22nd and 25th, the Sun will conjunct Neptune and Saturn, respectively, at 150 Aries and 443 Aries with Saturn, feeling the ongoing Saturn-Neptune conjunction. And then on the same day that the sun moves into Aries, Mercury will station direct. And this is at 8:29 Pisces, again, March 20th. So Mercury's been retrograde since February 25th. So it's about a 3.5 week period that Mercury is retrograde. So Mercury, in this case, is opening up the heart and the spirit and the connection between the mind and the heart as well. So it's all about feeling and merging with the oneness of all for Pisces. So this is including all the stuff that's happening in Aries. So Mercury's playing a role here too by really enforcing like our connection with our hearts and empathy and compassion and being able to really open that up as not from a place of that it's a weak point, but from a place of strength, that this is part of what we are as human beings. So this gives us opportunities to really tune into what we feel, explore as healthy empathy and compassion for others all around us. This is also the last sign of the zodiac, and it's meant to be the transcendent of the trivial challenges that we face and bring in the love for all of humanity and the cosmos. Then at the end of the very end of the month, after Venus conjuncts Eris and Chiron on the 25th of March, Venus will move into Taurus on March 30th. And that will stay in the sign of Taurus until April 23rd. So this is like the first early symbol of like kind of breaking apart the Venus Pisces monopoly that's been happening with the planets. And so this will essentially help us because of those stelliums that have been taking place one after another, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, and then coming up in Aries, then we get Taurus energy coming in. And so this is where, particularly in April, May, and June, planets start to separate more, with certain exceptions, particularly the inner planets. So Mars will slowly also start to kind of break apart in the coming months as well. Mars, as far as like the stellium energy itself, not the actual planet. So Venus's entry into Taurus comes soon after on a conjuncted Eris and Chiron on the 26th of March. It adds an element of the rise of the goddess and her willful desires and gifts to take in the pleasures of the earth and bathe in its comforts and conveniences. Venus will help us focus on what is valuable in our lives, both from within and without. So there's a really strong element of caring for ourselves and how we value who we are. That's going to be really important, I think, as Venus transits this sign for about 3.5, nearly 4 weeks. So it's a chance to connect into it, and then of course the sun will enter um, the sun will enter Taurus in April 19th. So we're going to get two planets in Taurus and joining uh, Uranus at the very last degree of Taurus before it moves into Gemini on April 25th of 2026. So here's the chronology for the month, and this is what we've got going on. And you can see it's kind of scattered, although we have a very powerful first 10-day period, between Mars moving into Pisces and the full moon eclipse. And then we have Venus moving to Aries, conjuncting Neptune and Saturn, and then Jupiter stationing direct on the 10th. And then there's this like between the 15th and 26th of March, we have a lot of activity taking place. I think it's going to be a pretty big, strongly felt time period for humanity here between the 15th and the 26th of March. So definitely stay tuned for that. And this particular slide is something I post for every month. So there'll be other posts that you'll see in my social media feeds that will have this shown up there that you can also utilize for your own reference too. All right. Well, thank you all for being a part of this, and please like and subscribe if it's something that you love to see again. I do this every single month along with other astrology videos. This is what I do for a living as far as like I am an astrologer. I do personal astrology readings, mentoring, classes, events, astrocartography, and more. You can also go to my co-creative efforts with Caitlin Castell at mystaralchemy.com to learn about the stars and how to use the stars in ceremony and in your own personal lives. And then my website's inspiralnexus.com. So thank you all for being a part of this, and I will see you again next time, and have a happy month of March and lunar eclipse coming up here.